Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving headfirst into a topic that's both fascinating and surprisingly complex: the search for a Jewish homeland. Over the late 19th and 20th centuries, a number of different regions were considered as potential locations for a Jewish state, each with its own unique backstory and set of challenges. We'll be looking at the historical context that made the need for a Jewish homeland so pressing, as well as the often overlooked proposals that, for various reasons, never came to fruition. So buckle up as we journey from the plains of Uganda to the frigid plains of Birobidzhan, exploring the political machinations, social upheavals, and, sadly, the prejudices that shaped this tumultuous period in history. This isn't just about maps and dates, it's about understanding the human stories of displacement, resilience, and the enduring hope for a place to belong. Our first stop takes us to East Africa, a place that might seem surprising for the establishment of a Jewish homeland: Uganda. It's the early 1900s, and anti-Semitism is rampant across Europe, particularly in Russia, where pogroms, organized violence against Jews, are tragically commonplace. Jewish communities are desperate for a safe haven, a place where they can live free from persecution. Enter the British Empire, then at the height of its power and grappling with its own set of issues, including how to manage its vast colonial holdings. In 1903, the British government, under the leadership of Colonial Secretary Joseph Chamberlain, made an intriguing offer: a tract of land in what is now modern-day Kenya, then part of British East Africa, for Jewish settlement. This proposal, known as the Uganda Scheme, was born out of a complex mix of motivations. The British government saw it as a way to both address the plight of persecuted Jews and potentially bolster their own colonial presence in East Africa. The plan was also fueled by a paternalistic view of colonialism and a certain degree of anti-Semitism, as it sought to address the Jewish question by removing Jews from Europe altogether. The Uganda Scheme immediately sparked heated debate within the burgeoning Zionist movement. For some, like Theodor Herzl, considered the father of modern political Zionism, the offer represented a pragmatic solution to a dire situation. Herzl saw Uganda as a temporary refuge, a place where Jewish communities could develop self-governance and escape immediate danger. However, many within the Zionist movement vehemently opposed the Uganda Scheme, arguing that Jewish historical and religious ties to Palestine couldn't be ignored. In 1905, at the 7th Zionist Congress, the proposal was narrowly defeated, with many delegates arguing that accepting Uganda would extinguish any hope of ever establishing a Jewish state in their ancient homeland. While the Uganda Scheme ultimately failed, it highlights the desperation and complexity of the Zionist movement in the early 20th century. Fast forward a couple of decades, and our journey takes us to the far eastern reaches of the Soviet Union, to a region known as Birobidzhan. Located near the Chinese border, Birobidzhan was an experiment in social engineering, an attempt to create a distinctly Soviet Jewish identity. The idea for a Jewish Autonomous Oblast emerged in the 1920s during a period of intense social and political upheaval. The Soviet government under Lenin was grappling with managing the country's diverse ethnic and religious groups. Officially, the Soviet Union promoted atheism and sought to suppress religious expression, including Judaism. However, they also needed to address the challenge of integrating different ethnicities. Establishing a Jewish Autonomous Oblast in Birobidzhan served several strategic purposes. It was presented as a way to provide a home for the Soviet Union's Jewish population. Birobidzhan was also seen as a way to secure the Soviet Union's eastern border. The campaign to populate Birobidzhan began in the 1930s, promoting it as a land of opportunity. Propaganda depicted Birobidzhan as a socialist paradise, but the reality was far less idyllic. The region faced harsh weather, limited infrastructure, and a lack of basic amenities. Many Jewish settlers were ill-prepared for the challenges of frontier life. The Soviet government's promise of cultural autonomy proved largely hollow. While Yiddish was initially promoted, Russian quickly became dominant. Jewish cultural and religious practices were often suppressed. Despite these challenges, a small but resilient Jewish community did take root in Birobidzhan. Yiddish-language schools, theaters, and newspapers were established. However, the region never fulfilled the Soviet government's grand vision of a thriving Jewish Autonomous Oblast. Our exploration of potential Jewish homelands takes a dark turn as we delve into one of the most disturbing chapters of the 20th century: the Madagascar Plan. Unlike the previous examples of Uganda and Birobidzhan, which were at least presented as attempts to address Jewish needs, the Madagascar Plan was a product of Nazi Germany's genocidal ideology. Conceived in the late 1930s, the Madagascar Plan was a chilling proposal to forcibly relocate Europe's Jewish population to the island of Madagascar, then a French colony off the coast of Southeast Africa. This wasn't about creating a Jewish state, it was about isolating and ultimately eliminating Jews from Europe as part of the Nazis' horrific final solution. The plan, championed by Adolf Hitler and other high-ranking Nazi officials, reflected their twisted worldview, which saw Jews not as human beings, but as a parasitic race that threatened the purity of the so-called Aryan people. The logistics of the Madagascar Plan were as daunting as they were inhumane. Millions of Jews from across Europe would be forcibly rounded up, stripped of their possessions, and herded onto ships bound for Madagascar. The island, already struggling to support its existing population, was entirely unequipped to handle such a massive influx of people. Thankfully, the Madagascar Plan never progressed beyond the planning stages. The outbreak of World War II made the mass deportation of Jews logistically impossible. While the Madagascar Plan was never implemented, it serves as a chilling reminder of the depths of Nazi depravity and the very real threat that Jews faced during this period. Of all the potential locations considered for a Jewish homeland, none looms larger in history than Palestine. This small strip of land on the eastern shores of the Mediterranean Sea holds profound significance for the Jewish people. It was here that the Zionist dream of a Jewish state would ultimately be realized, but not without tremendous struggle and sacrifice. The Zionist movement, emerging in the late 19th century, saw Palestine as the rightful homeland for the Jewish people. For Zionists, returning to their ancestral homeland was about reclaiming their heritage and establishing a nation where they could govern themselves. However, Palestine at the turn of the 20th century was a complex and contested land. Ruled by the Ottoman Empire, it was home to a predominantly Arab population, many of whom viewed the growing Zionist movement with suspicion. Despite challenges, the Zionist movement gained momentum in the early 20th century, fueled by idealism and growing international support. Jewish immigrants, driven by the promise of a new life and fear of persecution in Europe, began arriving in increasing numbers. The Balfour Declaration of 1917, in which the British government expressed support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, provided a major boost to the Zionist cause. However, the declaration also contained the caveat that nothing should prejudice the rights of existing non-Jewish communities, setting the stage for future conflict. In the decades that followed, tensions between the growing Jewish community, known as the Yishuv, and the Arab population escalated. The British struggled to maintain order and balance the competing claims of both sides. The horrors of the Holocaust further strengthened international support for the creation of a Jewish state. In 1947, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion declared the establishment of the State of Israel, fulfilling the Zionist dream of a Jewish homeland. Our final stop on this exploration of potential Jewish homelands takes us to South America, to a country that, while not as widely discussed as some of the other locations we've covered, played a significant role in the history of Jewish migration: Argentina. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Argentina, with its vast fertile plains and rapidly growing economy, became a destination for immigrants from all over the world, including a significant number of Jews fleeing persecution and poverty in Europe. The Argentine government, eager to populate its sparsely settled interior and attract skilled workers, actively encouraged Jewish immigration. In 1889, Baron Maurice de Hirsch, a Jewish philanthropist from France, founded the Jewish Colonization Association, JCA, with the goal of establishing agricultural settlements for Jewish immigrants in Argentina. Hirsch, deeply troubled by the plight of Jews in Eastern Europe, saw Argentina as a land of opportunity, a place where they could build new lives free from persecution. The JCA purchased vast tracts of land in the Argentine provinces of Buenos Aires, Entre Rios, and Santa Fe, and began establishing Jewish agricultural colonies. These colonies, often named after biblical figures or places, became home to thousands of Jewish immigrants, primarily from Russia and Eastern Europe. The JCA provided land, tools, and training to the settlers, helping them to establish farms and create self-sustaining communities. Life in the Argentine colonies was not without its challenges. The settlers, many of whom had no prior agricultural experience, faced harsh weather conditions, unfamiliar crops, and isolation. Nevertheless, they persevered, building synagogues, schools, and cultural institutions, determined to create a new life for themselves and their children. Thanks for sticking with us on this whirlwind tour through history. As we've seen, the path to establishing a Jewish homeland was anything but straightforward. From the plains of Africa to the wilds of Siberia and the pampas of South America, the search for a place of refuge and self-determination took many unexpected turns. Each of the proposals we explored reveals a great deal about the complexities of the 20th century and the challenges faced by the Jewish people. While these alternative plans ultimately faded into the annals of history, they serve as important reminders of the often winding path that history takes and the importance of understanding the context behind these momentous events. What are your thoughts on these lesser-known chapters of history? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful content exploring the past, present, and future.